Right, let's now cross live to the India Today Conclave.
For those who are nationalists, it is not in their interest that their article of faith is questioned, because it is that article of faith that allows them to do that extra bit, which.
So those who are returning their awards, the award brigade, as some say, the gang, as others say, are they anti-national?
Well, that's a question that they have to answer. But the question that I will ask of them is that, to whom are they returning that award? And to whom did the award give? Do we have an option? Do you have an option to change your nationality? Do you have an option? If India gave them this award, is it that India that they have lost their faith in, that they are returning that award to? And in doing so, the question they must ask, are they strengthening India, whatever may be their conception of India, or are they weakening India?
Okay. You know, Albert Camus, he said, I love my country too much to be a nationalist.
To me, that's a theoretical formulation. I mean, it is, I mean, what does that really mean? The very fact is that, when France had a terror attack, they sat through parliament, changed 90 of their laws overnight, put individual liberty when it came in conflict with national interests behind, and put national priorities on perspective, and did what they needed to do.
So your point is that when it comes to individual liberties versus what is good for the nation, individual liberties take a second place.
I think that when it comes to an individual's rights and obligations in conflict with the larger interest of the nation, it is inevitable that the interests and the welfare of the nation must prevail over the individual interest.
And who decides what's good for the country? The elected representatives.
There are various ways by which we have put a system of checks and balances, a system of governance, whereby we actually discuss and decide whether we are taking the right decision. And we always, as a country or as a society, don't end up taking the right decisions, and that only we know in hindsight. But we try that every time this comes into conflict, we respect, and that is why we revere those institutions. That is why it is surprising when we say that a decision taken by the Supreme Court of India is a decision that we wish to challenge. Then the question is, which is the next institution to which we will take recourse?
So you're specifically talking about, I have a set of questions and I'd like the audience to participate in this. Raise your hands. I'm going to ask some questions. Shaurya is going to answer those questions, and then you tell me if you agree with him or you disagree with him. We will specifically talk about a number of slogans that were raised, not just at one university, but at several places. Now tell me, is it anti-national to say those things, or does this come in the category of freedom of expression? So Shaurya answers those questions first. It's a rapid fire round. He answers first, and then raise your hands if you agree with him or disagree. Afzal hum sharminda hai, tere qatil zinda hai.
This is a no-brainer. Of course, it's, how can I define this as nationalist? What is an anti-national slogan?
Audience, national, anti-national. Okay. तुम कितने अफजल मारोगे, हर घर से अफजल निकलेगा.
Of course, anti-national.
भारत की बर्बादी तक जंग रहेगी, जंग रहेगी. Okay, let's get him. हम क्या चाहे आजादी, संघवाद से आजादी, मनुवाद से आजादी, सामंतवाद से आजादी.
Anti-national.
Hold. I'll repeat. हम क्या चाहे आजादी, संघवाद से आजादी, मनुवाद से आजादी, सामंतवाद से आजादी.
नहीं. No, wait. हम चाहें, just repeat that again. आजाद.
हम क्या चाहे आजादी, संघवाद से आजादी, मनुवाद से आजादी, सामंतवाद से आजादी.
So this is okay. This I won't call anti-national. I won't. Azadi, if it is from specific, the formulation. But if they say hum chahe azadi, then I have a problem.
Okay. There's one more line, which I want first you to answer, and then all of you. मेरे गले पर भी छुरी रख दो तो मैं नहीं लगाता नारा भारत माता की जय. मेरे गले पर भी छुरी रख दो तो मैं नहीं लगाऊंगा नारा भारत माता की जय.
Of course, anti-national. Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. Let's, this is a little bit of a. There is. How do you judge what is anti-national or national? Before we, just let me ask yourself, in my view at least, how I judge it. Ask yourself this question: does this intention or this action that I am doing strengthen my nation or it weakens my nation? That is, even when I protest, even within, am I doing something? Am I giving an alternative that actually strengthens, that actually builds on my, or am I criticizing, or am I, by my actions, doing things that will weaken my nation? So even when I protest without a solution, even when I question the institutions, that without recommending a solution, then a part of me says that, is this really nationalism? Have you really applied your mind? Have you really applied your heart and soul to try and figure out that if this is not what you want, then what is the alternative? And I don't think that people are foolish, that they can be fooled by using sophisticated arguments or using complicated language or finer nuances to display whether the proponents of these are they actually feel for the nation, or they they feel for something which is over and above the nation.
Okay. Now.
If the other guys see me talking with you in that way, I will get in trouble. I was supposed to torture you. So what I think is, I was sitting there and speaking to a guy who at that point didn't really went to Syria to do jihad as ISIS do jihad, but went there to help the civilians in this war, and suddenly he was sitting in front of a journalist and have to torture him, which he didn't do. So I found that very interesting, and I was held for a week where they basically treated me well before I was later on taken to a kind of torture center where they held me for like 2 weeks or so.
And you had Stephen Sotloff and James Foley, they were with you in that prison?
No. I saw Stephen like 2.5 months into my captivity. He was captured much later than me. And I met James 4 or 5 months into my captivity. So we were kind of put together, At that time there was many different groups that suddenly were put together, and which is now ISIS, and they had different people, and that was why we were put together one by one, and suddenly we're sitting, I think, 19 guys together in the same room.
But you saw them being tortured. They were tortured and you were made to witness it.
Yeah, but I think we can talk about torture. That's such a strange thing that happens many places in Syria. But what I think is very important and interesting to talk about was when we were tortured and the guys left, suddenly we had each other. It was, if I was left alone, it would have been the worst thing. I would rather be in a group and then tortured rather than be myself, not being tortured. As being together with James and with Stephen, I had somebody to interact with, and together we could be strong against something that threatened our lives every day.
And 3 perfect strangers, you became very, very close friends.
Of course you will. We hated each other, we loved each other. We had, even if one made a fart, I could smell. Tortured rather than be myself, not being tortured. As being together with James and with Stephen, I had somebody to interact with, and together we could be strong against something that threatened our lives every day.
And 3 perfect strangers, you became very, very close friends.
Of course you will. We hated each other, we loved each other. We had, you know, even if one made a fart, I could smell who in the room made that fart. You know, we knew each other very, very well, which was an amazing experience as well. But of course, we lived with the fear every day. We didn't know what was our fate.
So, did you at any point of time, while you were a prisoner of the ISIS, think that you'll survive? Or did you think that's the end? Were you ever made to wear orange suits like this?
Yeah, we were given these orange suits. And like every day we tried to hold on to something. That could be a picture that was taken for us like a few weeks ago, and hoping that picture will be a part of a negotiation, but we don't know. You never know anything. But there was something in the end where I was one of the last one getting released, and I was sitting with 3 Brits and 3 Americans, including James and Stephen, and suddenly we could see a pattern. Like, they were negotiating for me, they were negotiating for the German guy I was with, but they were not negotiating for either the Brits or the Americans. So it was very clear that it was something different. They have different interest in using us.
So the British prisoners knew they would die, the American prisoners knew there was no negotiation on for them, but the Europeans, I mean, you and the German prisoner knew that there were negotiations on.
There was some negotiation going on, but we didn't know that if it will go well, you know. I knew that the Danish government would never pay for me. I was lucky that I had a private company working for me when I left, so I knew that somebody was taking care of me, but you know, anything can go wrong. You know, when I was released 3 weeks later, the Americans started bombing ISIS. If I was released 3 weeks later, I will not be released. I will be, you know, beheaded in an orange jumpsuit in a desert. So it was very, very, like, so many things happened. When I was released, suddenly people started talking about ISIS. They were not talking about ISIS 13 months before when I got captured. So a lot of things happened. When I was released, suddenly I saw on a phone by the guy who carried me across the border, and he said, see how big Islamic State has become? And I was like, holy, it was Syria and Iraq. We had no clue of that.
Yeah. So, money was raised for you to be released. Now, the way cricketers are very popular in India, you very popular in Denmark, and was it easier then to raise 1.3 million pounds for your release?
You know, I was sitting inside a prison. I don't know what really happened in Denmark at that time. I just know that there was some people working on my case to try to collect some money, and they managed to do that and send it down to release me, as well as the French and the Spanish and the Italians, etc. have helped there. People.
Your mother, your sister, your friends, they carried out a big campaign on Facebook, and many said it's a secret campaign because there was fear that paying for your release virtually meant funding terror.
You know, that's always a discussion. You know, it's a very difficult discussion, either if you should pay ransom or not. And I know as many people as we are in this room, as many different opinions there is on this. I couldn't say anything. I didn't have anything to say. You know, I was just a small tool and a big puzzle. Imagine a chess game. I was just a small pawn used as some kind of propaganda, as some kind of tool in this big international war that was going on. You know, I had one fate. James, Stephen had another fate. So, yeah, suddenly we were just small bricks in a big puzzle.
At one point of time, James Foley knew he was dying. He would not survive. He made you memorize a letter to his mother. And you remembered that letter word for word?
When one of the French guy left the prison, I asked him to carry out a letter as well for me, to my family. But the big difference between my letter for my family and James's letter to me was that my letter was "see you soon" and James's was basically a goodbye letter. So we were small memories he had with his sister, with his brothers, with his moms, with his dad, with his grandmom. So it was very specific things that, but I knew James very well. I've heard his story a million times. So when I went out and spoke to his family, I felt like I knew them very well, and I think that was a big help for them to kind of understand the whole situation, what was taken away from them, to get a bit closer to James through me.
Can you describe to us the moment, the way you memorized the letter and the way then you narrated it to his mother, Diane?
No, but at that point we didn't know that James will die. You know, I called his mom and dad the next day I was released, and they just put it on, you know, speaker and listened to whatever I remember James telling me, and we still had hopes up for the Americans and Brits to come home alive. Yeah, so yeah, it didn't went that well. It didn't went that way. So I think, yeah, that letter was an important thing for James's family.
All three of you were prisoners of Jihadi John, all three. Was he any worse or better than the other Islamic State terrorists, considering he had a different background, they had a different background?
I think Jihadi John was Islamic State's you know, face towards the West. You know, he was the one beheading. But when we were sitting inside, it was not only John, as we called them, it was also Ringo and John. Ringo and George. There was 3 guys who was taking care of the negotiations for the Westerners. So when I came out, I was surprised that suddenly he was the one who was taking out to be the bad guy, because all 3 of them was acting the same way, treating us the same way, and yeah, they're very good at making us scared, I think.
And you have those permanent marks on your hands now. They'd handcuff you to the ceiling with your feet not touching the floor.
No, my feet was touching the floor, you know. But when you enter Syria, you know, the reason why the conflict in Syria started 5 years ago was because there was some teenage boys who was like heavily tortured by the regime. That was what started the whole thing. So me going to Syria, covering what I think was important to cover, suddenly ending up in that situation, like that's a part of warfare, I guess. So I don't think that's very just Islamic State-ish. That's many different people who do that to each other, basically. Not that I speak up for Islamic State, but I really think that in general we have to stop torture, because that's what, like when I was cuffed to the ceiling, I saw children running around me. They were just with their parents at work. And if they see that it's okay to torture, you know, suddenly they think it's okay. And then the next generation will be much worse than this generation. So I think it's very, very important that we are taking care of each other and make sure that things like that, what happened in Abu Ghraib, Bagram, etc., that no matter who we are, I think we have to think about, treat people as humans always.
But for people like Jihadi John, it was basically just another job, because he would make people sing, he would make you dance, and that was also a form of torture. You also had some other version of Hotel California that you used to sing in prison.
In some way, I think that these British guys who did that to us knew that we will go back home and we will talk to the media, we will do something, and I think they were very aware of making some strong propaganda, even though Islamic State was not very big at that time. So the fact that we are talking about all those things, what they did to us, exactly what they want us to do. And that's why I think it's much more important to talk about how we as a group kept together and tried to hold away the fear from outside the door. Because they told us to sing a stupid song from Hotel California. They told us to to do many different things. I danced tango with one of the guys at some point, but I don't think that's the interesting part. I think the interesting part is how people manage to survive under such a huge stress, because people...
Incident, a promising young Kabaddi player was shot dead on the streets of Rohtak in Haryana. What's truly alarming is that the fatal shooting was caught on camera on Tuesday afternoon. Kabaddi player Sukhwinder Singh...
Instead of living a quiet, happy, boring life, so I decided to get married, and my wife says, welcome to hell, boy. But the episode ain't that bad. It's just about alright, above average.